Junior staff in the back, Beth called out, waving her clipboard like a royal scepter. Senior team members up front where they belong. I watched as newer hires, some barely 3 weeks into the job, strutted to the front rows. My 3 years of 60-hour weeks and the algorithm that doubled our client base apparently meant nothing. The photographer adjusted his tripod while I squeezed between 2 interns in the last row, practically hidden behind a forest of heads. Perfect, Beth chirped, her voice honey-sweet. Those in leadership positions, please center yourselves. My cheeks burned as Dave, hired 6 months ago but friends with Beth's nephew, took center position. Dave, whose contribution to our latest project involved rewriting my code and somehow making it less efficient. The flash went off 4 times. That's a wrap, the photographer announced. I thought that was the end of it, just another day of being invisible. 2 weeks later, our CEO, Gray, stopped by our department floor. Unusual, since he typically stayed in the executive suite upstairs. The company-wide email had gone out that morning with the annual photo attached. I'd barely found myself in it, just a slice of forehead visible behind someone's shoulder. Great team we've built, Gray said, nodding at the framed photos lining our hallway. He paused at the new addition. Wait a minute. His finger tapped the glass. Where's our top performer? Where's Veda, the one who created the client-matching algorithm that saved us from bankruptcy last year? The silence crushed the air from my lungs as 37 heads swiveled toward my desk in the corner. Beth stepped forward, her smile tight. We have so many valuable team members, it's hard to showcase everyone prominently. But Veda's our star, Gray interrupted, frowning. The algorithm she built is why we're all still employed. Why is she hidden in the back? Beth's face turned the color of spoiled milk. It was just standard protocol for company photos. Junior staff. Junior? Gray's eyebrows shot up. Veda saved this company single-handedly. Fix this. I want a new photo by the end of the week. As he walked away, Beth's eyes locked with mine, cold as winter midnight. The message was clear. This wasn't over. And she was right. It was just the beginning. I know what you're thinking. If you've ever been deliberately pushed aside while watching someone else take credit for your work, you're probably gripping your phone a little tighter right now. This isn't just my story. It might be yours too. If you felt that burn of injustice, tap like so, I know I'm not alone. Subscribe to hear what happened next, because believe me, this situation got much worse before it got better. My name is Veda Bright, and until that photo incident, I'd believed hard work was enough. I grew up in a small town where my parents ran the local hardware store, teaching me the value of problem solving and persistence. As the only girl in my high school who took apart computers for fun, I learned early that being underestimated could be both a curse and a strange advantage. I joined Datamind Technologies right after college, a promising startup with 20 employees and innovative ideas but struggling execution. While the outgoing personalities dominated meetings, I quietly built solutions. My client matching algorithm transformed our business model, intelligently pairing our services with the companies most likely to benefit. Revenue doubled within months, Gray noticed. Remarkable work, he told me during a rare one-on-one meeting. You've got a future here. But as our company grew to over 100 employees, so did the politics. Beth Harmon arrived as our new HR manager, bringing her designer wardrobe and MBA from an elite university. She immediately established herself as the company's social director, organizing happy hours I rarely attended, and weekend retreats that exhausted rather than energized me. Our paths might never have crossed significantly if not for her son's college project. Veda, she said, appearing at my desk one afternoon. I hear you're the genius around here. I looked up from debugging a particularly troublesome section of code, just doing my job. My son has this machine learning project for his college application. Nothing major, just needs some expert guidance. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Everyone says you're the one to ask. The deadline for our new product version was 3 days away. I'd been sleeping under my desk more often than in my bed. I'm sorry, Beth. Any other time I'd be happy to help, but with the launch deadline, it would only take an hour or two, she pressed. Helping develop young talent is part of our company values, isn't it? After the launch, I promised. I'd be glad to then. She stared at me for a long moment. I see. Well, I wouldn't want to distract from your coding. The way she said it made programming sound like a childish hobby. From that day, everything changed. My name disappeared from meeting invites. Oversight, Beth claimed when I asked. The temperature in our open office meant nothing to most people who sat in the central area, but my corner desk caught a constant draft from a faulty vent. When I requested maintenance, Beth explained budget constraints meant prioritizing shared spaces. My weekly one-on-ones with my manager, Jack, became bi-weekly, then monthly, then as needed. The isolation was subtle but effective. Then came the resources. New hires received updated equipment while my requests for additional memory lingered in processing. Access to the development server was suddenly restricted due to security protocols, requiring approvals that took days rather than minutes. Just how things work as companies grow. Jack shrugged when I raised concerns. More structure, more process. I adapted. I worked harder. I documented everything. The photo incident merely made visible what had been happening for months. But Gray's intervention threatened whatever game Beth was playing, and she escalated accordingly. The following Monday, Beth announced a departmental reorganization to better align with strategic objectives. She explained during an all-hands meeting. My stomach dropped when the new org chart appeared on screen. My position had been moved under Dave, effectively demoting me without changing my title. Questions? Beth asked, scanning the room but avoiding my eyes. I raised my hand. What metrics were used to determine the new structure? Multiple factors, she answered vaguely. Leadership qualities, communication skills, team dynamics, not technical expertise or actual results? I pressed. The room went quiet. Beth's smile tightened. We value many attributes beyond just technical output, Veda. Perhaps that's something to reflect on. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen, a resignation letter half written. The sensible move would be to leave, take my skills elsewhere. But something burned inside me, a determination that whispered, why should I be the one to go? My phone pinged with a company-wide email. Subject line, Innovation Hackathon Announcement. The annual event where teams competed to solve business challenges, with the winning solution implemented company-wide. Participation was voluntary but strongly encouraged. Another ping. A direct message from Beth. Hope you'll participate this year, Veda. Though these events typically reward team players rather than solo performers. I read between the lines. She expected me to either decline, confirming I wasn't a team player, or join a team where my contributions could be diluted and attributed to others. That's when the idea began to form, not just to defend my position, but to expose the systematic way Beth and others like her operated. The pattern wasn't random, it was calculated. And if I could prove it, I registered for the hackathon as a solo participant. When the challenge was announced that Friday evening, a chill ran down my spine. Develop a solution for equitable recognition of employee contributions across the organization. Beth stood at the front, announcing the judging criteria. When she spotted me sitting alone, a small smile played at her lips. She thought she'd already won. She had no idea what was coming. The hackathon began at 6 p.m. Friday and would run until Sunday afternoon presentations. Most participants gathered in preformed teams, setting up their workspaces with snacks, energy drinks, and matching t-shirts. I claimed a small table in the corner, away from the bustling groups. Beth wandered through the open workspace, stopping to chat with various teams. Remember, we're looking for innovative but practical solutions, she reminded everyone. When she reached my lonely station, she paused. Working alone, Veda? Bold choice. I work best this way sometimes, I replied, not looking up from my screen. Her perfectly manicured finger tapped my table. The challenge is about recognizing contributions across an organization. Ironic you'd tackle that individually. After she walked away, I opened my notebook where I'd been sketching ideas since the challenge announcement. While others would likely create subjective rating systems or peer feedback tools, I had something different in mind. Something that would use pure data to tell the truth. I worked through the night, fueled by determination and strong coffee. By Saturday morning, when others were bleary-eyed or napping under tables, I had the basic architecture designed. My solution would analyze multiple data sources, project management software, email communications, code repositories, meeting transcripts, to create what I called contribution networks. These weren't simple org charts or performance metrics. They were visual webs showing how ideas actually flowed through the company, who sparked innovations, who developed them, and who was instrumental in their execution. Most importantly, the system could detect patterns of recognition, who received credit versus who did the work. Around noon, Beth made another round. "How's everyone doing?" she called cheerfully. When she stopped by my table, her eyes narrowed at my progress. "What exactly are you building?" "A visualization tool," I answered vaguely. "It maps contributions using existing company data." "Interesting." She lingered, trying to make sense of my screen. "You know what the judges are looking for, right? Practicality, team collaboration, not just technical wizardry." "I understand the criteria," I replied, turning back to my work. As the hours passed, I added more sophistication. The system could identify cases where someone consistently received recognition for work primarily done by others. It could highlight employees whose critical contributions went systematically unacknowledged, all based on objective data, not opinions or popularity. By Sunday morning, with presentations looming, I hadn't slept in over 30 hours. My eyes burned, and my hands trembled slightly as I prepared my demonstration. I'd used anonymized company data from the past 6 months that developers were authorized to access for testing purposes. What it revealed made my heart race. The patterns were clearer than even I had expected. Certain people, including Dave and 3 others who were frequently in Beth's office, consistently received credit disproportionate to their actual input. Meanwhile, several employees, myself included, generated significant value that was routinely attributed to others. At 2 p.m., presentations began. Teams displayed elaborate point systems, peer recognition platforms, and award structures. The judges, Beth, Gray, and 2 department heads, nodded and took notes. Each solution addressed the challenge, but relied heavily on subjective human input. When my turn came, I connected my laptop to the projector with shaking hands. "My approach is different," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "Instead of creating another system where bias can enter through subjective ratings, I've developed a tool that reveals what's already happening." I launched the visualization. Colorful nodes representing employees appeared, connected by lines of varying thickness based on their collaborations. This shows how work actually flows through our organization based on objective data: who initiates projects, who contributes code or content, who communicates crucial information. Beth shifted in her seat. "And how exactly does this solve the challenge?" "That's for Stackity." "Because it reveals invisible work patterns," I explained, clicking to the next view. "It shows whose ideas drive results, regardless of their position or visibility." I loaded the 6 months of company data. Contribution networks blossomed across the screen, with certain hubs glowing brighter than others based on their impact. My own node burned bright, connected to virtually every successful initiative of the past half year. "This is just one view," I continued, navigating through the interface. "We can examine specific projects." "This seems highly subjective," Beth interrupted. "How can an algorithm possibly measure real contribution without human judgment?" "It doesn't measure opinions," I replied calmly. "Only documented actions and outcomes. The system is completely objective." Gray leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Can you show us a specific project? The client portal redesign, perhaps?" I pulled up the data. The visualization clearly showed my contributions forming the backbone of the project, while the official recognition had flowed elsewhere. It also revealed something unexpected: a systematic pattern of certain employees being highlighted regardless of input, while others were consistently obscured despite critical contributions. "This isn't just about me," I added quietly. "It's happening to multiple people." The room fell silent. Beth's face had lost all color. "How accurate is this data?" asked Mira, our technical director and one of the judges. "Everything is sourced directly from our systems. Code commits, project management tools, internal communications. The algorithm simply connects and visualizes it." Gray studied the screen, then turned to Beth. "This is illuminating. What do you think?" Beth's laugh sounded brittle. "It's certainly creative, but hardly practical. How would implementing this improve anything? It would create division, resentment. Besides, there are privacy concerns." "Actually," I interrupted, "the final version would anonymize individual data while still showing patterns. The goal isn't to shame individuals, but to make invisible work visible." Gray nodded slowly, "And to ensure recognition goes where it's earned." The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. Some team members looked uncomfortable, others intrigued. Dave stared at the floor. After all presentations concluded, the judges retreated to deliberate. I sat alone, my heart pounding. Had I gone too far? Would this backfire completely? 20 minutes later, they returned. After careful consideration, Gray announced, "We've selected our winner." He paused, scanning the room. Veda's contribution network system shows remarkable insight into our challenge. It's innovative, data-driven, and addresses the root issue, recognizing true contribution rather than merely creating another layer of subjective evaluation. The applause was scattered, uncertain. Beth's face remained frozen in a tight smile. With some modifications to protect privacy while ensuring visibility, Gray continued, "We'll begin implementing this system company-wide next quarter." Quote, as people gathered their things, Gray approached my table. "Impressive work, Veda. I'd like you to lead the implementation team." "Of course," I replied, relief washing over me. Beth materialized beside us. "Gray, we should discuss the practical implications before making commitments. There are serious considerations about how this might affect team dynamics." "I think that's precisely the point, isn't it?" Gray replied. "To affect current dynamics." He turned to me. "See you tomorrow, Veda. My office, 9 a.m. As he walked away, Beth's eyes met mine. The hatred there was raw, unfiltered. "Congratulations," she said, each syllable like ice. "You've certainly made your point." "This isn't personal," I replied quietly. "It's about fairness." Her laugh was soft and dangerous. "We both know that's not true." She leaned closer. "You've made a mistake, Veda. I'm still head of HR. I still determine promotions, team assignments, performance reviews." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And I have a long memory." She walked away, leaving me with a hollow victory, and the knowledge that I'd just made a powerful enemy even more determined to destroy me. The next morning, I arrived early for my meeting with Gray. The office was quiet, most employees not yet at their desks. I took the elevator to the executive floor, a space I'd rarely visited. Gray's assistant wasn't at her desk, so I waited in the hallway, reviewing my notes on implementation plans. The elevator dinged, and Beth stepped out, stopping short when she saw me. "Veda." Early bird as usual. "Good morning, Beth." She adjusted her blazer. "I'm also meeting with Gray this morning. About your project." My stomach tightened. Of course, she'd try to undermine this before it began. "I've been thinking," she continued, her voice honey-sweet. "Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. You're clearly talented, and I'd hate for misunderstandings to affect your career." "Misunderstandings?" "Your perception that I've treated you unfairly. It's simply not true." She sighed dramatically. "Leadership requires difficult decisions. Not everyone understands that." The elevator opened again, and Gray emerged, surprised to find us both waiting. "Good, you're both here," he said. "Let's talk in my office." As we followed him, Beth flashed me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I realized with crystal clarity that this wasn't just workplace politics anymore. This was war. Gray's office overlooked the city, morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. He gestured for us to sit. "I've been thinking about your hackathon solution, Veda," he began. "It revealed something troubling about our organization." Beth leaned forward. "If I may, Gray, while innovative, implementing such a system raises serious concerns about morale and Beth, Gray interrupted gently. "I've reviewed the data myself. The patterns are undeniable." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I asked it to pull additional data last night. 3 years of records." He turned his monitor so we could both see. The algorithm shows systematic patterns in how recognition and opportunity have been distributed. Patterns that don't align with actual contribution. My breath caught. I hadn't gone that far back in my analysis. "With all due respect," Beth said, her voice tight, "algorithms can be flawed. They lack human nuance." Which is precisely their value here," Gray replied. "No bias, just data." He looked directly at her. "Data showing that since your arrival, certain employees have been systematically sidelined despite their performance." The silence stretched between them. I felt like I was watching a chess match, where the queen was suddenly in check. "I'm implementing Veda's system," Gray continued, "and I'm creating a new position to oversee it, Director of Talent Recognition, reporting directly to me." He turned to me. "I'd like you to take this role, Veda." The world seemed to stop. Beth's face drained of color. "That's," she began. "Not up for discussion," Gray finished firmly. "Also, Beth, I'd like you to transition to our Cleveland office. They need experienced HR leadership as they expand." Cleveland, our smallest satellite office, over 500 miles away. Beth's composure cracked, just for a moment. You can't be serious. I've built relationships here. I've shaped this culture. Yes, Gray said quietly. That's become quite clear. When the meeting ended, Beth left without looking at me. I remained seated, stunned by the sudden shift in power. Thank you for your courage, Gray said once we were alone. It's not easy to challenge an established system, especially when you're the one being hurt by it. I just wanted fairness, I replied. And now you'll help ensure others get it too. He smiled. The announcement goes out this afternoon. Beth transfers next week. As I walked back to my desk, the magnitude of what had happened began to sink in. I'd exposed the truth, yes, but I hadn't expected such immediate consequences. Part of me felt vindicated, another part uneasy. Beth's parting look promised this wasn't over. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine. Beth had lost this battle, but something told me she wasn't done fighting the war, and her next move would be far more dangerous. The anonymous text message was just the beginning. Over the next week, as news of my promotion and Beth's transfer spread through the company, I received 3 more messages from different unknown numbers, each more disturbing than the last. Some victories are short-lived. Smart people know when to quit. Data can be manipulated. So can people. I changed my phone number and threw myself into my new role. Gray gave me a small team and resources to implement the contribution network system, company-wide. For the first time in years, I felt valued, my work recognized. Beth cleaned out her office on Friday. I deliberately stayed late coding to avoid any confrontation. When I finally emerged around 9 that evening, the office was empty except for the cleaning staff. Beth's office door stood open, the room stripped bare except for standard furniture. As I passed, something made me pause. A small white envelope lay on the desk, my name handwritten on the front. Against my better judgment, I entered and picked it up. Inside was a simple note card with 5 words. This isn't the final chapter. I crumpled it in my fist, fighting the urge to look over my shoulder. 3 days later, the Cleveland office confirmed Beth had never arrived for her first day. Her apartment had been emptied over the weekend. She'd simply vanished. Probably found another position, Gray suggested when I mentioned it. Given the circumstances of her transfer, I'm not surprised she chose to resign. But something felt wrong. The Beth I knew wouldn't simply disappear. She'd want the last word. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. The contribution network system launched in beta, with volunteers from each department testing it. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Finally, a way to ensure work was properly attributed and recognized. Then the whispers started. First, it was just Madison from accounting stopping me in the break room. Hey, Veda, is it true you dated Gray before joining the company? What? No, I've never... Sorry, she said quickly. Just something I heard. The next day, 2 developers were discussing project timelines when I approached. They fell silent, exchanging glances before changing the subject entirely. By week's end, I noticed people avoiding eye contact in the hallways. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Even my new team seemed uncomfortable in our meetings. Jack, my former manager, finally pulled me aside after a particularly awkward project review. Look, Veda, as your friend, you should know what's being said. My stomach clenched. What exactly is being said? He lowered his voice. That you and Gray had a relationship. That your promotion wasn't about your talent, but about personal connection. That the whole hackathon thing was orchestrated to push Beth out because she knew about it. The room seemed to tilt sideways. That's completely false. I know that, Jack said quickly. But these rumors are everywhere. Even clients are asking questions. Where did this start? Jack shrugged. No one knows exactly. Anonymous comments in the company suggestion box. Then emails from unknown accounts to department heads with evidence. Old photos of you and Gray supposedly at the same restaurants before you were hired. Text message screenshots. All fabricated, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I never even met Gray before my interview. I believe you, but damage control might be necessary. The next morning, I went straight to Gray's office. His assistant gave me a strange look as I entered. We have a problem, I began, closing the door behind me. Gray's expression was grim. I was about to call you. You've heard the rumors? Yes, they're completely false. Of course they are, he sighed heavily. But they're spreading. The board called an emergency meeting this morning. My heart sank. The board? This is absurd. Absurd. It gets worse. Someone sent every board member a dossier, alleging the contribution network system was designed to track employees in unethical ways, that it violates privacy laws. That's not true. The system explicitly anonymizes individual data when showing patterns. I know, Veda, but the damage is done. They're reviewing the entire project, and he hesitated. And what? And they've asked that you step back from leadership until the review is complete. The injustice of it stole my breath. This is Beth. It has to be. We have no proof of that. She's gone. Not gone, I corrected. Just invisible, like I was. That afternoon, I was moved back to my old desk, stripped of my director title temporarily. The Contribution Network project was paused indefinitely. In the cafeteria, people sat at other tables, leaving me isolated. I'd gone from vindication to humiliation in less than a month. Beth had orchestrated my downfall without even being present. That night, alone in my apartment, I paced from room to room, anger and frustration building like steam in a pressure cooker. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was about my reputation, my integrity. My laptop pinged with an email notification. Unknown sender. Subject line. Enjoying the spotlight? The body contained only an image, the company photo where I'd been hidden in the back row, but it had been digitally altered, with my face now front and center, crudely pasted over Gray's body, my arm around his shoulder. The message was clear. You wanted visibility? Now you have it. I slammed my laptop closed, hands trembling. Beth was systematically destroying everything I'd built, and she was just getting started. The next morning, I called in sick. I needed space to think, to plan. If Beth could operate from the shadows, so could I. I opened a new document and began mapping connections. Who had access to company photos? Who could fabricate text messages? Who knew enough about both of us to create convincing lies? The answer came in a flash of insight. Not who, what. The company database itself. Beth had been HR manager with access to personnel files, email archives, security badge data tracking when people entered and left the building. With that information, she could construct a false narrative placing Gray and me at the same locations, manipulate timestamps, create a history that never existed. My phone rang Mira, the technical director who'd been one of the hackathon judges. Veda, are you okay? You're never sick. I'm fine. Just needed a day. Listen, she said, her voice low. Something strange is happening. IT reported unusual access patterns in our personnel database last month. Someone downloaded massive amounts of data using Beth's credentials, but the timing doesn't make sense. In meetings when the access occurred, my pulse quickened. Her account was compromised? Or she gave someone else access? Either way, the board is asking questions about data security now, on top of everything else. I sat up straighter. That's it. That's how she's doing this. She's using company data to construct these false narratives. Maybe. But without proof, it's just another theory. Proof. I needed proof. Mira, does the system log external IP addresses when someone accesses the database remotely? Of course. Standard security protocol. Could you send me those logs? Just for the unusual access patterns you mentioned? She hesitated. That's not exactly authorized, especially with you temporarily removed from leadership. I know, but if I'm right, Beth is systematically manipulating information to discredit both me and the contribution network system. The system that would have exposed exactly this kind of behavior. Silence stretched between us. I'll see what I can do, she finally said. But Veda, be careful. Whoever's doing this is dangerous. By that evening, Mira had sent me the logs. The unauthorized access came from an IP address in a small town 30 miles away, far enough from the city to be inconspicuous, close enough to stay connected to company gossip. I searched property records for the area, no Beth Harmon listed, but there was a rental agreement for a small lakeside cabin, signed by Robert Harmon, her brother. The pieces clicked into place. I drove out the next morning, telling myself I was just gathering information. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, partially hidden by pine trees. A silver sedan was parked outside, not Beth's usual car. From a distance, I watched through binoculars as a man, presumably Robert, left carrying grocery bags. Once he drove away, I approached the cabin cautiously. Through the window, I could see a desk set up with multiple monitors. And there, moving between them, was Beth. She looked different, hair cut short, dyed dark, but it was unmistakably her. typing furiously at a computer where the screen displayed what looked like our company intranet. I snapped photos with my phone, heart pounding. Then I retreated to my car and called Mira. I found her. She's living under the radar, still accessing our system somehow. That's disturbing. What are you going to do? A plan was forming in my mind, not just to clear my name, but to ensure Beth could never do this to anyone again. First, I need to understand exactly how she's manipulating the data. Can you check if there's unusual activity in the network traffic analysis logs? I'll check. But Veda, you should tell Gray about this. Not yet. Beth has been careful to stay one step ahead. If we move too soon, she'll disappear again and continue the damage from somewhere else. Over the next week, working remotely, I built a parallel version of the contribution network system, one designed to track not just work contributions, but data manipulation. Who accessed what information, when, and what changes were made. Mira provided me with network logs showing Beth was using her brother's credentials. NSU, he worked in facilities management with limited system access, combined with backdoor access points she'd created before. Leaving. My trap was simple but effective. I created a shadow dataset, a fake treasure trove of manipulatable information about me, Gray, and several board members. Information that would be irresistible to someone looking to create more damaging rumors. Then I worked with Mira to place it in a seemingly secure but actually monitored section of the database. Anyone accessing it would trigger an invisible trace, marking every piece of data they touched with an undetectable watermark. The honeypot is set, Mira confirmed 3 days later. Now, we wait. We didn't wait long. That weekend, the trap was triggered. Someone had accessed the shadow dataset using Robert's credentials, downloading personnel files, email archives, and calendar data. Got her, I whispered, watching the trace activate. Monday morning, I returned to the office, head held high despite the whispers and stares. In the afternoon, new rumors began circulating, this time about Gray having hidden financial connections to board members, explaining why they'd supported his inappropriate relationship with me. I smiled grimly. Beth had taken the bait, using the watermark data to construct her newest attack. I messaged Mira. It's time. The emergency board meeting was called for Wednesday morning. I wasn't invited, but Gray insisted I attend. When I walked into the boardroom, 8 pairs of eyes turned to me, with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. Ms. Bright, the board chair began. Given the circumstances, your presence here is unusual. I understand, I replied calmly, but what I'm about to show you affects everyone in this room. Gray nodded for me to continue. I connected my laptop to the display system. For the past month, this company has been under attack from within. Not a technical attack, but an informational one. I pulled up the network access logs. These show unauthorized access to our personnel database from an external location, using credentials belonging to Robert Harmon, brother of former HR manager Beth Harmon. Murmurs filled the room. The board chair leaned forward. And you know this how? Because I found her. I displayed the photos I'd taken of Beth at the cabin. She's been systematically creating false narratives using manipulated company data. That's a serious accusation, one board member said. What proof do you have that the information about you and Gray is false? This was the moment I'd been waiting for, because I set a trap, and she walked right into it. I launched the special version of the contribution network system. On screen, a web of connections appeared, but instead of showing work contributions, it displayed data manipulation. Every file Beth had accessed, every alteration made, every piece of information extracted and repurposed was highlighted in red. The rumors about financial connections between Gray and board members, completely fabricated using data from my shadow dataset, data that was invisibly watermarked. I zoomed in on specific documents. Here's the original data. And here's how it was altered to create the appearance of impropriety. I clicked through example after example. Timestamps changed, contexts removed, innocent interactions reframed as suspicious, and the alleged relationship between Gray and me, constructed the same way. Meeting timestamps manipulated to make it appear we were in the same restaurants before I was hired. Security badge data altered to suggest patterns that never existed. The boardroom had gone completely silent. Beth Harmon created an elaborate web of lies because I exposed how she'd been unfairly undermining people who threatened her control. When Gray supported my contribution network system, she targeted both of us. The board chair cleared his throat. If what you're showing us is accurate, what it is, Gray interrupted. It has verified the unauthorized access and the data manipulation. Then we have a serious security breach on our hands, the chair concluded, and potentially criminal activity. There's more, I said quietly. The watermark data Beth accessed contains hidden code. Every time she opens those files, her location is pinged back to our servers. I pulled up a map with a blinking red dot. That's where she is right now, still actively working to undermine this company and everyone in it. The board chair reached for the phone. I'm calling our legal team and the authorities. As the meeting concluded, board members approached to apologize for doubting me. The Contribution Network project was immediately reinstated, with increased funding and my directorship restored. But as everyone filed out, I remained seated, staring at the blinking dot on the map, Beth's current location. Gray touched my shoulder. It's over, Veda. You won. I smiled but said nothing, because he was wrong. It wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. That night, I drove back to the cabin. Police would be coming tomorrow with warrants, but there was something I needed to do first. Something just between Beth and me. As I approached through the trees, I saw lights on inside. Beth was still there, unaware that her carefully constructed revenge plan was collapsing around her. I walked to the front door and knocked firmly. The peephole darkened. Then, silence. I knocked again. Beth, I know you're in there. It's just me, alone. The door opened a crack, chain still in place. Beth's face appeared, her expression a mixture of shock and rage. What are you doing here? She hissed. I think we should talk, I said calmly. Woman to woman. Beth's eyes narrowed to slits. You've got some nerve showing up here. May I come in? What I have to say won't take long. She hesitated, then unlatched the chain. 5 minutes. Then you leave. The cabin's interior was meticulously organized. Multiple screens displaying various data feeds. Printouts organized in color-coded folders. A detailed timeline pinned to one wall with my name at the center. Connected to Gray and other company executives with red string. Quite the operation, I observed. Beth crossed her arms. If you came to gloat, save it. Actually, I came to understand. I gestured to the elaborate web she'd created. All this effort, all this planning. Why? Why? She laughed, a harsh sound lacking any humor. You really don't get it, do you? You think this is about some petty workplace drama? About my son's college project? Then what is it about? Beth paced to the window, checking outside before turning back to me. Control, power, the natural order of things. Her voice had taken on an evangelical quality. People like you think merit should determine success, that the quiet, technical person who never looks up from their screen deserves recognition. Don't they? The world doesn't work that way. Never has. Social capital, who you know, how you make people feel, the alliances you build, that's what drives success. I was maintaining balance. By deliberately hiding others' contributions, by pushing people into corners, by ensuring those who understand how to play the game were rewarded. She gestured dismissively. Your algorithm may have doubled revenue, but who built the client relationships that implemented it? Who smoothed ruffled feathers when deadlines slipped? Who created the culture that attracted talent? You, I acknowledged, but that doesn't justify erasing others. Beth's smile was cold. Your so-called contribution network threatened everything. Suddenly decisions would be made based on data instead of human judgment. People like me would become unnecessary. The realization hit me. You weren't targeting me specifically. You were fighting for survival. Finally, she gets it. Beth sank into her desk chair. When Gray chose your system over my expertise, he declared war on the entire social structure I'd built. And your response was to fabricate rumors, manipulate data, and try to destroy both our reputations? I did what was necessary. I nodded slowly, taking in the room again, the evidence of her obsession, the lengths she'd gone to maintain her version of control. I have something to show you, I said, pulling out my phone. I opened an app and turned the screen toward her. Beth squinted. What am I looking at? A live feed of the Contribution Network. The board reinstated it this morning. Full implementation across all departments. Her face drained of color. They did. Your attacks backfired, Beth. Every rumor you spread, every piece of data you manipulated, strengthened their conviction that we needed a more objective system. I swiped to another screen. And this is the special version I built to track data manipulation. The one that watermarked the files you accessed and pinged your location back to our servers. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. You're bluffing. The board has seen everything. So has legal. And the authorities. I checked my watch. Who should be arriving in about 10 minutes? Beth lunged for her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. I'll delete everything. There won't be any proof. I'm getting by the common. Too late. Every action you've taken has been logged and preserved on our secure servers. The invisible code in those files you downloaded, it's been documenting everything. She froze, then slowly raised her eyes to mine. What do you want? Money? For me to disappear permanently? I want you to understand something. I moved closer, my voice steady and clear. This isn't about you versus me. It never was. It's about fairness, transparency, making sure people's work is recognized, regardless of who they are or how they play office politics. Noble sentiments, she sneered. So why come here alone? Why not wait for the police? I smiled, because I wanted you to hear this from me directly. I leaned in closer. You were right about one thing. Visibility matters. But you used yours to hide others. I'm using mine to make sure no one can hide again. Outside, the crunch of tires on gravel broke the silence. Car doors slammed. That would be the authorities, I said calmly. Beth's composure cracked completely. You little. Before they come in, I have one question. All those times you pushed me into the corner, hid my contributions, isolated me from the team. Did you ever consider I might be learning? Watching? That everything you did to diminish me was actually preparing me for this moment? A knock at the door interrupted her response. This isn't over, Beth hissed. Actually, it is. I walked to the door and opened it, revealing 2 police officers and Gray. Beth Harmon? One officer asked. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of computer fraud, identity theft, and corporate espionage. As they led her out, Beth locked eyes with me one final time. No words were necessary. Her glare said everything. Gray stepped inside, surveying the elaborate setup. My God, she was more obsessed than we realized. It was never personal for me, I said quietly, but it was entirely personal for her. 3 months later, Beth pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation. The story made headlines in tech industry publications. HR manager's revenge plot exposes workplace recognition flaws. HR manager's revenge flaws. Our contribution network system became the company's most valuable asset, not just for internal use, but as a product we now license to other organizations. Gray promoted me to Chief Innovation Officer, with a team of 20 reporting directly to me. On the anniversary of the company photo incident, we gathered for a new picture. This time, everyone stood mixed together. No front row for executives, no back row for junior staff. As the photographer prepared to shoot, Gray called out, "Wait, where's our CIO?" I stepped forward from where I'd been helping arrange people, and a space opened in the center of the group. Right where she belongs, someone called out, and laughter rippled through the crowd. As the flash went off, I wasn't thinking about Beth, or vindication, or even justice. I was thinking about all the quiet contributors and companies everywhere who might finally become visible because of what we'd built. Later that day, I passed the wall where our company milestones were displayed. The newest addition was a framed article about our contribution network system being adopted by major tech firms worldwide. Beneath it hung our new company photo. Everyone visible, everyone valued. My phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. For a second, my heart raced, old fears resurfacing. But when I opened it, I found only a single line. Your story gave me courage to speak up at my company. Thank you. I smiled, took a screenshot, and pinned it to the top of my personal board. Because in the end, true revenge wasn't about destroying Beth. It was about building something she could never tear down. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible or had your contributions overlooked, I hope it gives you courage. Sometimes the person pushed to the back row is exactly the one who should be leading. Tap like if you've ever been underestimated. Subscribe for more stories of resilience, and comment about a time when you stood up for yourself. Remember, the most powerful response to being made invisible isn't revenge. It's becoming impossible to ignore.